Good morning. I am Dr. Teke Apalata, a clinical microbiologist, and today we are going to discuss viral hepatitis. And this lecture will be divided into different parts. And the first part of this lecture will deal with an overview of viral hepatitis. So let me share my screen. So I said that we will have a discussion regarding an overview of viral hepatitis. So what is hepatitis? Hepatitis is an inflammation of the liver. An inflammation of the liver, that's what we call hepatitis. And this can cause a range of health problems, and most of them or some of them can be fatal. You know, there are so many problems that that can happen as a result of viral hepatitis. And the liver, when we speak about the inflammation of the liver, this is what we call the liver. It's found in the right hypochondrial region. That's where you find the liver, you know, so it's there. And the liver plays several functions. For instance, it plays a major role in the removal of toxic byproducts, you know, of certain medication. The liver metabolizes or break down a number of nutrients from food to be able to generate energy when needed, when our body requires energy. And the liver also help your body, you know, to fight different types of infection by removing bacteria from the blood. The liver produces most of the substances that regulate the blood clotting. And other functions of the liver also include prevention of shortage of nutrients, you know, by storing a number of vitamins, minerals, and sugar. They are stored in the liver, and the liver produces most of the proteins that we can see that are required by the body. And the other important thing is that the liver produces what we call bile. The bile is a compound that is needed to digest fat and to absorb vitamins, mainly vitamin A, D, E, and K. So you can see that the liver plays, you know, several functions, several roles. So it is an organ that is very, very important, and its inflammation, it's what we call hepatitis. And the hepatitis can be caused by many things, but in this presentation, we are mainly going to discuss an overview about viral hepatitis. So it means that the hepatitis that is caused by viruses. And we have 5 main strains of hepatitis virus. So we have 5 commonest causes of viral hepatitis. We have hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E. So they are referred to as like A, B, C, D, and E. So those are the most commonest strains that are associated with the development of viral hepatitis. So among those strains, they differ in many things. They might have differences in terms of their mode of transmission, in terms of the severity of the illness that they cause, in terms of their geographical distribution, and also preventive method that you can use to try to avoid, you know, to become infected by any of these viral strands. Okay, so what we can also remember is that hepatitis viral types B and C mainly leads to chronic diseases. So when we speak mainly about chronic hepatitis as a result of a viral infection, it's mainly caused by type B and C. You know, the rest like A and E, they really don't cause chronic infections. So chronic infection is mainly caused by B and C, so they lead to what we call liver cirrhosis. They can lead to the cancer of the liver, and they are the reason for numerous death, viral hepatitis related death that we see. Then type A and B can be prevented through vaccination. So we have a successful vaccine to prevent against hepatitis A and hepatitis B, but the rest, we really don't have any successful vaccine. So when it comes to the global burden of viral hepatitis, to try to show how big is the problem, you know, it is estimated that almost 1 million people die from chronic hepatitis every single year. So it can be hepatitis B or hepatitis C. So almost 1 million people die every single year as a result of chronic hepatitis. And where are those people coming from who are dying from this? It's because we have about 325 million people worldwide who live with hepatitis B and or hepatitis C. So they live with these chronic conditions, and out of those 320 million, 25 million people who are infected with viral hepatitis B and C, at least 1 million out of those die every single year from their chronic, they succumb from their chronic infection. And according to the World Health Organization, almost 4.5 million deaths that are observed could have been prevented, could be prevented, you know, by 2030. So there are efforts to try to prevent at least 4.5 million deaths by 2030 through vaccination, appropriate diagnostic tests, and treatment, you know, based on medicine and education campaign to try to prevent the infection. So there are a lot of efforts that are put in place to try to, you know, to prevent this infection from killing people, from killing so many people. So the WHO Global Hepatitis Strategy aims to reduce new hepatitis infection by 90% and to reduce new cases of death by 65% between 2016 and 2030. So those are the new targets by the World Health Organization. They are putting strategies in place to try to reduce new infections by 90% and cases of related death by 65%, you know, by 2030. So this is the target. Now let's look at, have a general overview of those 5 viruses or strands of hepatitis virus. So we say that we have A, B, C, D, and E. Now, the first difference is when it comes to the source of the virus. So you will see that A and E are coming from the feces. So it means that the route of transmission for Hepatitis A and E, it's what we call orophycal or fecal-oral transmission, because the virus can be found in the feces of infected people. But then B, C, and D are mainly found in the blood or blood products or body fluid. That's where you can find B, C, and D. So it means that the transmission, the route of transmission for B, C, and D, it's mainly percutaneous. You can sustain a needle stick injury, or maybe it can also be through sexual contacts when there are a bit of blood involved, or any body fluid. So you can have transmission of B, C, and D. Now, when it comes to the development of chronic infections, A and E, again, don't lead to chronic hepatitis, but we have chronic hepatitis as a result of B, C, and D. They lead to chronic infection. Then when it comes to prevention, we have pre and post-exposure immunization. We have a very good vaccine for A, hepatitis A. We also have a very good vaccine to prevent for hepatitis B. We don't have any vaccine for C, D, and E, but for hepatitis E, there is a vaccine that is licensed in China, but not for the rest of the world, but there is a vaccine that is licensed in China. So we just need to look at, to rely with other preventive measures like screening of the blood donor, or risk behavior modifications, and some of those measures that we can put in place. And we can also prevent the transmission of hepatitis D, because if we manage to successfully prevent hepatitis B, you cannot contract hepatitis D if you don't have hepatitis B. So we will see that when we will discuss about hepatitis D always happens either as a co-infection with hepatitis B, or as a super infection to hepatitis B. So if we successfully prevent hepatitis B, then we can reduce cases of hepatitis D. So in terms of the virus that is causing these conditions, hepatitis A, the causative agent is a non-enveloped, single-stranded RNA virus that belongs to the family of picornavirus, But then E is also a non-enveloped, single-stranded RNA virus, but it's not a picornavirus like hepatitis A, it is a calcivirus. If we compare A with E, because they behave in the same way, but those causative agents don't belong to the same family. So this is a picornavirus, this is a calcivirus. Now, hepatitis B is an enveloped virus. There is a difference. A and E are non-enveloped. So B is an enveloped virus. It is a double-stranded DNA virus that belongs to the family of hepatnavirus. But the C is also an enveloped virus, but it is a single-stranded RNA. C is different from B because B is a double-stranded DNA virus, but C is a single-stranded RNA virus that belongs to the family of flavivirus. And the D is what we call a defective single-stranded RNA virus. Okay. And the other most important things is the incubation period, how long it takes for you to develop hepatitis after being exposed to the causative agent. For hepatitis A, it can take 3 to 5 weeks, 3 to 5 weeks. But if you look at hepatitis E, it's almost within the same range as hepatitis E. But hepatitis B and C, you can see that the incubation period is extremely long, especially for hepatitis B, where it can take you 10 to 15 weeks, but the range can be even from 6 to 23 weeks before that you develop the infection. But we will discuss also the advantage of this long incubation period when we will deal with a specific type of this infection. So, in conclusion for this overview is that hepatitis A and E spread through contact, mainly with food or water that has been contaminated by an infected person's stool. Remember that we find these viruses in the feces of an infected person. And if these contaminated stool can maybe contaminate vegetables, food, fruits, if you don't wash fruits properly, you don't wash vegetables properly before cooking them, or if the feces, the contaminated feces can also contaminate water, if the water system is not well treated, then you can develop hepatitis A or hepatitis E. B, C, and D spread through contact, with an infected person's blood or body fluid, So B and D may also spread through contact with other body fluid, mainly. And this can occur in many ways, including sharing of needles or also an unprotected sex. So you must also know that this hepatitis, mainly hepatitis B, is a sexually transmitted infection. So it can be transmitted via sexual intercourse. Hepatitis A and E viruses typically cause only acute conditions that are short-term and many cases can resolve unless they create mainly fulminant hepatitis, serious acute hepatitis infection. But in most cases, A and E viruses are self-limited conditions, So your body can be able to fight that. But in the contrary, hepatitis B, C, and D viruses cause both acute and chronic infection that are long-lasting infection. So they lead to cirrhosis, they lead to cancer of the liver, they lead to many complications that we see that are associated with chronic hepatitis. So cirrhosis, liver failure, liver cancer, and most of the chronic hepatitis-related deaths are mainly the result of B, C, and D. So this was an overview of viral hepatitis infection. Now follow us on the second part of this presentation where we will discuss now with more details. We will discuss hepatitis A infection with much more details. Thank you and goodbye for now.